Our kids do not need a self-sacrificing parent. Our kids need a fulfilled parent. One of the most insidious forms of child abuse is a parent who doesn't chase their dreams and potential. Welcome to the High Vibe Life podcast, where we are obsessed with all things manifestation, neuroscience, personal growth, and quite simply, living a life beyond our wildest dreams. I'm Moira Casaba, author, speaker, podcaster, manifestation, and mindset master. Since getting sober 25 years ago, I've helped tens of thousands of women break through and achieve massive levels of wealth, joy, and freedom. Now it's your turn. Let's dig in. Welcome back to the High Vibe Life podcast with me, Moira Casaba, and we are going to talk about one of my absolute favorite topics today. And I really felt this call in my heart. So I want to say this. If you're listening to this podcast, take this as your sign from God, your sign from the universe, your signal that this is meant for you, that this whisper that I'm going to say very loudly is meant for you. You are here for a reason. You are listening for a reason. This message is meant for you. All right. You ready for it? What we're going to talk about today is, as a parent, chasing the dream and how incredibly important it is. You guys, I get on tons of stages and I talk to tons of parents, especially mamas, and I always tell them, I always ask the question, I always say this: do you think that by pursuing the business dream that they have, or pursuing whatever that dream is that they have, do you fear that you are going to be cutting corners as a mom? And the entire audience raises their hand. They're so scared. We are so scared, right? That we're going to sacrifice something for our children by kind of turning in the other direction and pursuing some type of career goal. And what I am here to tell you is that you are sacrificing so much if you don't pursue the dream, that you are sacrificing the best dang version of yourself, the mom that you're supposed to be, the leader that you're supposed to be, the creative that you're supposed to be, the joy that comes from pursuing the dream, the grit, the perseverance, all those attributes that your children need in you, the best version of you, right? I used to think a lot when my kids were little, I was like, goodness, this version that I had become by chasing the dream, right? Like I had built myself into a completely different person because, man, climbing that entrepreneurial mountain will build you, right? Just like the things I was just talking about, the grit, the perseverance, the character, the leadership, the joy, the happiness, the person that knows how to get up early and stay up late and pursue their dreams. That version for my kids was way more important of an example than spending more time at tummy time or a music class, right? And I used to think that because I had to tell myself that over and over and over again. And over the years, I saw that. I saw that they were becoming this best version of them because I was becoming the best version of me. That it is not just quality time that is so important, right? Quality time is important. But quality of you, right? Would you rather not pursue the dream, stay home, feel empty, feel like something's missing, suffer from, so many of us do, anxiety, depression, just feeling empty, right? I remember when my kids were really little and I was mostly at home, I just kept thinking to myself, like, I love my kids. Like, I love being with them, but this can't be it for me. I knew that there was something else. I knew that there was this hole in my soul, this purpose that called me, that there was something I was supposed to go out and do, go out and find, this other part of me that needed to just be filled up, right? And I saw a quote this weekend that I've never seen before. I was at a speaking engagement out in Utah. The quote is by Ed Mylett, who is one of our heroes, right? It's one of the best of the best. He's so amazing. He's somebody I look up to so much. And this is his quote. He says, "One of the most insidious forms of child neglect is a parent who doesn't pursue their dreams and potential." One of the most insidious forms of child neglect is a parent who does not pursue their dreams and potential. Way back before I had kids, so my oldest is 16 now. So gosh, this must have been 20 years ago. I was reading, I had a kind of a coffee table book all about Laird Hamilton and his life and his philosophies on health and family and all of these things. And that was really the first time my eyes were open to this. I didn't have kids yet, so I really wasn't contemplating this concept. But he talked about how, he was just born to be this, he was born to be Laird Hamilton. Like, it's so obvious outside looking in when we know somebody that is as big as him, right? In personality and in just his spirit and what he's done in the world. And he was talking about how, his work, his big wave riding, if you don't know, Laird Hamilton is like one of the most famous big wave riders in the world. And that obviously is a huge risk to his life. And how when he had his little girls, he questioned that. A lot of people question that of him, right? Will you still do this? Will you still do this? Because it's a life and death risk that you are putting yourself in voluntarily, and you have children now, you have little girls. And I just remember him explaining, who am I if I'm not that person, right? Who am I if I'm not doing what lights me up in my life? Who am I as their dad if I'm not pursuing the exact calling and the thing that brings me literally to life, right? So we got to think about that. Here's 3 little tips I want to give you that you can kind of concretely grab a hold of to really pursue this. If you're one of those people that you're like, gosh, I know what she's saying. I know the reality of this for my own self. And so number 1, prioritize your dreams without guilt. Listen, our kids do not need a self-sacrificing parent. Our kids need a fulfilled parent. And so you have to understand that the best dang version of you is you pursuing your dreams. And I want to give you this little kind of behind the curtain glimpse into my own childhood. My dad worked a lot. Not, 80 hours a week kind of dad, but he got up and went to work every morning. He came home at 6:00 at night. He put his briefcase on the table. He would play with us for like an hour. Like, he was such a present. When he was there, he was totally present. But then I also remember him every single night going to watch the nightly news. And it was like, don't bother dad. He's watching the nightly news. And the next thing I knew, we'd kind of all go to bed. And I remember as a young mom thinking, wow, I saw my dad for probably an hour a day, Monday through Friday. Like, I interacted fully present, but saw my dad for 1 hour a day. I saw my mom for a whole lot more hours. It was my dad that taught me so much about life, about what was important, about just wearing your emotions on your sleeve, about being present. All of these things I learned from my dad, and I saw my dad for an hour a day. And there were other kids around that he was playing with, right? And so I realized that it wasn't about the quantity of time, it was about the quality of time. And that really helped free me up to give myself permission to pursue the dream. And while I pursued the dream, you guys, because there was a little bit of guilt there, it actually made me 10 times better a mom because, man, when I was there, I was present. I was super intentional, and I'm still that way today, super intentional about my time with my children. All right, number 2, talk about your dreams out loud. You cannot keep them to yourself. You have to talk to your spouse about them. You want to talk to your kids about them. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But normalize dreaming big in your household. That's the best dang version of yourself, right? We want our kids to know that they can dream big. If we tell our kids that they can dream big, that they can be anything, and then they see us sacrificing our dreams, they learn by example way more than they learn by words. So talk about your dreams, talk about where you're going, make vision boards with your kids, set those big dreams on paper somewhere for all of you, and create a culture of dreaming big, and make sure that you're articulating to your kids, your dreams and the why behind them. And this dovetails right into the third point that I want to give you, and that is let them be part of the journey. Let them be part of the journey. I didn't realize what I was doing so many years back when I had this insane goal at one point in my career to be number one in a company that had almost 500,000 people in it, 400 some thousand. And at the time I was like number 400,000 something. And I was like, I have this dream. I have this big goal. And because I knew that I was going to have to work later, because I knew that I was going to have to get up earlier, because I knew that I'd be on, night calls, I sat down my then probably 3 and 4-year-old, maybe 4 and 5-year-olds. And I said, hey, I got to talk to you guys about something. Mom's got this big goal, this big dream, and it's going to kind of require all of us to get on board a little bit. And I hadn't thought about this ahead of time. It was just a whim one afternoon. They're like, Mom, what's the dream? What do you want to do? And I was like, well, I want to be number one. And of course, as wonderful as kids are, they were like, why? What do you get? And I remember thinking, gosh, and it was such a great teaching opportunity, right? I was like, well, I mean, I don't really get anything. I just want to see if I can do it. I want to see if I can prove to myself. And with that comes, if I'm going to be number one, that means along the way, I'm going to change a lot of people's lives. I'm going to help a lot of people because that's really how you get to number one. And I do have to tell you this quick little story because it was so cute about how on board my little kids got when they said, but really, what do you get? Like, they're like wondering if I get a trophy. And I said, well, nothing. And then I said, well, there is a big trip. Like Dad and I will go on a big trip somewhere, another place in the world, so another country. And I remember they kind of looked at me a little sad. And they're like, but we don't go, just you and Dad? And I was like, yeah, it's just for Dad and I. And I instantly said, you know what? I'll tell you what. Because I thought at the time that dream and that goal was so crazy and insane. I kind of promised something that I couldn't deliver on in that moment. I said to them, I'll tell you what, if Mom hits this goal, I will take each of you on a different trip, just me and you individually, wherever you want to go in the world. And guys, when I say I couldn't deliver on it, I could not financially deliver on that promise in that moment. But I also knew that if I would achieve the goal, I would have the finances to do it. And so luckily, my little girl just wanted to go to the American Girl doll store that was not far away. And I was like, okay, check, we can do that. And then my son, who was a little bit older, said, Mom, I want to go to San Francisco and see the Golden State Warriors play. I want to see Steph Curry play in person. And at that time, I was like, that's really big, son. Like, that's 2 plane tickets flying all the way across the country. We got to get hotel rooms. We got to get the tickets to the NBA game. Like, that's really big, right? But I instantly said, okay, deal. It's on. Like, that's the goal. If I hit the goal, that's what we'll all get, right? And so every single moment they're on forward. If I had to be on a late call, they're like, it's okay. Dad's got it, Mom. He can put us to bed. Of course, there were moments where they're like, oh, you have to do this again or something. But they understood. They were invested in the journey. They were invested in the dream. And it was so cute because our numbers would come out like once a month where we were, in that race to number one. And they started to get to know the other names of people that were kind of right around where I was. And it was like, well, Mom, what number are you this month? And we would be cheering. And I remember one day we were out on the boat when I got the numbers. And it was, those moments where your kids are like, Mom, what number are you? And they're like, well, where's so-and-so? Where's so-and-so? And they knew the other names of people. They were so vested in that journey. And the beautiful thing was at the end of that journey, I got to take them on those trips, that I did achieve that goal. But so much of the why I was able to achieve that goal is because bringing them along in the journey allowed us to be on it together and allowed me to step out of the guilt, right? one of my girlfriends, I remember her giving a speech somewhere, and she said that, and her business was similar, that, it was her success was a direct reflection of people's lives that she had changed. And so every single time that she would help somebody, and, maybe that was kind of like getting a new customer, or I'm not quite sure exactly what that looked like. I just remember her telling the story that they would run into the playroom and they had this big, cardboard like poster board on the wall, and her kids would go on there with marker that mommy helped one more person. And every single time they would mark it down, and they would visually be able to see this representation of mom trying to get to her goal by helping people. How cool is that that's what we get to teach our kids? So again, you are not sacrificing, right? You are not, it's not what you think. We think that we are sacrificing so much if we pursue the dream, but it's the opposite. We are sacrificing so much more by not pursuing the dream. The best version of you, the version that God knit you together as, the version that God calls you as, the version of you that your children need, is on the other side of pursuing that dream. So I hope that this episode resonates with you. I hope that you listen to that whisper. I hope that you take this as just that signal that, like, gosh, she's talking to me, and it's time for me to chase the dream. That's my hope for you today. Share this episode with a friend that may need to hear it, and we will see you next week on the High Vibe Life podcast.